afterwards.
Yeah, I mean,
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to our meeting. Okay, I'm introducing Phillip. So shortly after I met Phillip, we had an MFA hangout one Friday in autumn in my backyard. Foolishly, we all decided to end the night with whiskey shots. A horrible idea. Phillip and I got into a brief yet intense drunken argument about aesthetics at around 1:30 in the morning. It was like a parody of art school students. I ended up storming off, but as I lay in bed, I remember thinking, here I was about a month into my MFA program, already scraping up and making enemies with the other writers in my co. But when I woke up, I had a text from Phillip saying he wasn't sure what that was about, but he hoped we could put it behind us. He thought of me as one of his readers and wanted to remain peers, collaborators, maybe even friends. I'm happy to say we are friends and that our friendship has only deepened since then. Before I talk about his writing, I want to emphasize the generosity and kindness Phillip shows as a friend and as a peer, from reading dozens and dozens of pages of prose outside of workshop to defeating pro bono a mutual friend's eviction notice, using his skills from his past life as a lawyer. And of course, the countless impromptu pep talks he can give when others are in the pits of despair about their writing, or jokes when that's more appropriate. Phillip's writing is compulsively readable, but it's by no means easy or simple. Instead, I'm in constant awe of his ability to grapevine his narrative through intellectual, historical, and lyrical modes, how these modes ping-pong off one another, how they illuminate each other. In his project, his grief-stricken narrator wanders Italy after losing his love, spending his time in bars and museums, listening to the stories of others as he seeks the words to articulate his own, be they stories of the people he meets on his travels or of the artists of the distant past. Critically, his narrator is drawn to scenes of artistry and tragedy, and often to tragedies which have befallen the great women of mythology and history, as he unconsciously seeks structures for articulating his own grief. The emotion in Phillip's writing is quiet. It pretends to be stoic. It's subtle, and readers might miss it and mistake it for a kind of stone-cone intellectualism. Careful ones will appreciate the hypnotic, veiled, numb feeling emanating from his thoughts. This world is real and romantic, a world where art, architecture, and history hold primacy. Please join me in welcoming Phillip.
Thank you so much. That was better than I anticipated. Better than I deserve. Okay, yeah, so I'll be reading from my thesis project. I managed to kind of make short excerpts out of material from the first couple chapters. So it seems like some transitions are a little abrupt. Forgive me for that. It's a product of what I've done. Okay. I had started the day with a coffee on one of the benches that lined Central Park's mall, quarter-mile promenade, and the only intentional straight line inside the park's walls that proceeds from the Olmsted flower bed north to Bethesda Terrace, a circular concourse paved in brick at the crest of Cherry Hill. The mall is lined by two formidable lawns that each contain 2 rows of American elms, tall trees with massive trunks and a branch structure of considerable length and complexity, which gives the mall, when the trees approach their full complement of leaves, the appearance of being covered by a massive green canopy. As I approached the lawn adjacent to the western edge of the mall, the first row of elms to my right shifted in relation to me as I walked. The row of elms moved like the hand of a clock, ticking backward from 2 to midnight, until finally the trees were perfectly aligned. After a few more steps, I stopped directly in the middle of both rows of trees. Now twinned, they sought to find an apex in the distance, but though it appeared that they would ultimately converge, this was an illusion. The 2 rays ran parallel. They would never meet. Each tree would stare across an equal length of lawn at its opposite, until at last one's roots began to rot, or it was split lengthwise by lightning, until one was, from disease below or fate above, eventually felled. These shifts in perspective recalled to my mind our drive home from Montauk as we passed through Amagansett. We'd spent a summer afternoon at the end of Long Island, walking up to the top of the lighthouse at Montauk Point. We took the cliff walk back to the parking lot, stepping carefully amongst the large dark slab stepping stones that comprised the path above the beach. It was high tide and the waves crashed just below us against the rocks, sending sea spray up to meet us. On our right, above us, wildflowers lined the edge of the fields that surround the lighthouse. I grabbed a small red flower by its stem and plucked it from the ground and placed it behind my ear. When you turned around and saw me grinning, posturing, you shook your head. You did not approve of it being uprooted. You took it from behind my ear and placed the flower carefully between the pages of a novel you were carrying in your bag. I had failed time and again to remember its title, and sadly, no book was later recovered. Driving home, I felt my eyelids begin to slip, and I asked you to trade places with me. I sat reclined in the passenger seat, nodding and waking and nodding, the steady hum of the engine walking me to the precipice of sleep. As I was about to be thrown over, I noticed that we were approaching a nursery on our right. This was not merely a half-mile length of 2 miles of trees, but column upon column and row after row after row of saplings, their sparsely lit canopies in the far distance comprising, for me, the horizon. The nursery's young trees shifted in comparison to me according to the same function of time and space as governed my later encounter with the elms. While the elms are undeniably grander, the field of trees in Amagansett contained multitudes, and the combined effect of an unknown future, where would they, once grown, go and put down roots, and my present impression, blood orange, of the refraction of the sun's rays as it set, was such that I remember feeling not so much a sense of awe as that of grace. I imagine that I gestured and spoke and implored you, look. Though I have returned to that moment countless times, I cannot be certain what was said or done. In any case, it was a simple matter in the end. The beauty was a slight distraction. Later, what I remembered most clearly was a man at the matrix edge, where the nursery seated its grounds in the road. He was short and squat, wearing dirty khaki workman's clothes and a wide-brimmed straw hat. His elbows were drawn into his body, and his forearms were folded up along his chest, and his hands were clasped atop the wooden handle of a rake on which he leaned. His chin rested on the backs of his hands. I recall him standing there, the sunburned man leaning on his rake, posed as if it were any other break from his labor. It is almost certain that by the time the man came upon the scene, the authorities had already arrived and were going about their business in earnest. Because if they had not, who would stand there, as the man was, merely taking stock of the destruction, doing nothing? But I do not remember any commotion, do not recall any flashes of color and noise from police cars or ambulances. I recall only silence and the man looking at me. The look was indecipherable, or at least it was to me in my state. What I best remember of him is the shape he cut out of the air. From where I had ended, still strapped and bound, my view through the broken windshield, straight down the middle of 2 rows of trees. The triangle described by his body in profile, the rake on which he leaned, and the ground was complete. But still it was kin to the figure behind him, and that behind me. 2 legs each of trees and bodies, all receding to unfinished isosceles. It was several months after the accident, how odd that people insist on calling it devastation by such a slight word, that I decided I could no longer practice law and that I would do what was in my power to become a writer. You had repeatedly urged me toward this decision, and I hoped it would be a sort of memorial in that regard. But what to write? Therein lies the rub. Perhaps it would be best, I thought, to not worry too much about that for the time being. Perhaps it would suffice to leave New York for somewhere else, if only for a short while. A mind cleared to the extent possible of the familiarity of the city and the grief that attended it, would hopefully become a sort of pistil, a thing ripe for germination, and then pregnant, as we had intended you would be at some indeterminate point in our shared future. Truths we held to be self-evident, that nothing terrible can befall 2 people in love. That was the idea in any case, which was at bottom not so much an idea as it was the feral clawing of a trapped animal against the cold stone of a dry well's walls. I had not saved much while working as an attorney, but the plan I hatched was to spread the brunt of it. I looked at it as a purging of sorts, to end up where I began in at least one respect, a nice narrative loop. So I crafted an itinerary that revolved around museums, churches, art, and architecture. The beauty, the stories embedded therein. Hopefully I'd received inspiration sufficient to write something of which you might have been proud. I flew into Rome from New York overnight, sleeping fitfully. When I visited half a lifetime ago, I did not care much for the eternal city, a crowded, sprawling memento mori. But for what I had begun to think of as my project, it was a necessity. After checking into my hotel and taking a brief nap, I made my way to the Villa Borghese. Entering the gallery, the first piece I encountered was Bernini's The Rape of Persephone. I moved around it, in tune with the contrapposto of the piece, and stopped to stare at Hades' hand gripping the marble flesh of Persephone's thigh. The dimpled imprint of Hades' fingers struck me as almost sensual, disconcertingly so, given the violent subject matter of the sculpture. Perhaps the hand is best understood as not Hades, but Bernini's, the sculptor conveying his love for the stone. Of course, this fails to satisfy. fails to mend the rift between what I feel and what I know. As I sat on one of the benches that faced the statue, I tried to separate those things that are dead, like the Colosseum, from those things that are alive, like Bernini's Persephone, and to begin the attempt to resolve the dissonance I always feel when confronted with art like this, these terrible things I cannot look away from. Looking, I tried to imagine the scene unfold. I had to close my eyes because the marble representation in front of me impeded my vision. In darkness, I received a tangle of images. Persephone in the grass, her legs stretched out in front of her, leaning back and resting her weight on the palms of her hands. A snake, green and semi-camouflaged, slithering up to her left hip, flicks its red tongue and raises its head up into the air, hissing in her direction. She looks down at it dismissively. She can tell between snakes, and this one is of no moment. She remains calm and watches it slither up her hip and across her pelvis, its head burrowing into the dark brown earth to her right. The snake stops, goes still, and she feels it tense. It is a scaly green belt across her white dress, tightening. It turns its head around to look up at her, and she stares back down at it. The snake breaks first and slinks away. Now she rises and walks over to a nearby lake. The sky above her is unperturbed by cloud or bird. The lake is clear and empty of reflection. Persephone picks up a rock, throws it, watches as it carves its path across the sky. The rock falls, disfiguring the face of the lake. Ripples spread in uniform waves. The combinator of lake and sky are harmed similarly, circles and arcs. There is a certain mathematics to discontent. The lake left free from our devices will soon be stilled. The sky heals instantly. The rock buried will be washed and weathered to its last grain, but not for quite some time. A shadow appears suddenly and moves swiftly across the lake. The lake's surface remains still, but appears to undulate, as if the shadow could cause waves, or was itself made of waves. Then from above her and behind her, and somehow below her, a trumpeting sound, like the blare of bugles. Looking up, she sees the shadow's source, a skein of geese, screeching, fleeing, God knows what. Then the ground begins to quake. I see the blades of grass quiver, I see the earth tremble, but I do not see it fissure. Cannot picture him as he breaks through to seize her, grab her thigh, twist her body, and take her under. I cannot manage to picture meaningfully the abduction past those details gathered from the stone. But perhaps when they go under, there's a dimly lit cave, a craggy entrance carved out of a mountain space. There is, of course, a beast in front of it, with 3 mouths, thrice snarling, thrice dripping, knives out. She is led along narrow castle passageways that culminate in a red door. Inside, there is a candelabra that sits atop an otherwise empty table. The surface is inlaid with blue tiles that softly reflect the light of the flames. The candles are all of equal length. The wicks, it appears, have just been lit. She is expected. The room is well appointed. Red and silver brocade curtains cover the windows. The bed is a golden satin woven wood. And following on that image, another elsewhere, a gleaming gaudy throne whose bronze has been overburnished too aggressively deformed, and consequently the reflected light is near blinding. It sits in the center of an empty gray space, the dimensions of which are gargantuan. I cannot discern a ceiling above, only an increasing absence of light. Then she is in front of me again, captive, opulently chambered, small solace that the cage is gilded. The candle wicks have been snuffed out. One of the curtains has been tied to the side and the window opened, allowing light into the room. The view out of the window is simple, a green meadow, just mossy grass and a clear azure sky, much like the field from which she was taken, but barren of its flora, its life. She watches as a thin, hazy cloud begins to form at the horizon line. It thickens quickly, like an egg dropped into a hot pan, and then rises precipitously, a white cumulonimbus tower violently erupting to the heavens. The sky quickly darkens as the pinnacle of the cloud at the top of my field of vision splits open and expands outward, as if it were a mushroom's cap, bursting up and out a ghostly stem. And this is how she knows. The mouth that opened up to swallow her has closed. She lets the curtain fall. She moves to the center of the room and stands in front of a mirror that lines the back of the door. She meets her own gaze. It is the strangest thing. Up above, she is a painter. It is her task, God-given, to paint the flowers and name them. And up above each flower, once she painted and named it, those flowers remained, despite all their blooming and dying, blooming and dying. Those flowers, those colors. Up above, names and colors are fixed in things. Red will be red, a rose is a rose. But like a person whose hair turns white from shock, her features below the earth have altered. There, underneath, her hair and eyes, they are darker. Auburn and amber, not the blonde and blue that she remembers, as if her existence has been dyed in a different hue. Should she ever make it back above, she wonders if she'll have her eyes, or if they will be darkened still.
Jillian A. Fantin is a second-year MFA candidate concentrating in poetry. They were the recipient of a 2021 Poet Fellowship from the Martha's Vineyard Institute of Creative Writing, and they regularly collaborate with Chicago-based mixed media artist Kate Luther on interactive ekphrastic poetics for textile exhibitions. Jillian's poetry has been published in the American Journal of Poetry, Timber, The Daily Drunk, Entropy, and elsewhere, and is forthcoming in Wind Up Mice, Cell Food Station, Homology Lit, and Gut Slut Press. Jillian's current project is titled The Donut World, and I have had the pleasure of reading it in many stages. I'll begin with an excerpt from their abstract to set us up. Imagine a world shaped like a donut, gravity desperately gripping its inhabitants with severe weather, shorter days, and weighty gravity to compensate for the drag of the whole. This world, the donut world, poses unique opportunities and challenges for its inhabitants, all beings who ritualistically take over the life of the artist, the director, the poet. For the beings who exist in the donut world, mere existence and survival is radical. They resist their inevitable destruction on a tenuous planet by embracing bodily hedonism, ostensibly nonsensical babbling, and decadent play with the kitsch of 20th and 21st century American queer culture. Like many of Jillian's formal choices, this gluttonous babbling serves as a reminder of the ways in which marginalized communities have weathered the gravity and danger of existence on planet Earth, and more specifically, America. In many pieces of Jillian's, we cannot get a clear picture of the action that is happening because the poet and characters have their own coded language, in which words of food, fashion, and the body take the place of expected verbs, adverbs, and adjectives. For instance, Pierrot clown collars, fondant-faced and jelly-tittied, or dazzle camouflaging hucklebaby octopuses and eclair. Similar to the redactions found throughout the text, this language protects the poet and their characters, shielding them from the persecutions and judgments of a violent, straight world while taunting us with its shameless erotics. It is a language that hides in plain sight, sticking its tongue out, and I'm always reminded that not everything is or should be completely knowable to me. Like the recurring character of Pierrot, I must just exist, allowing the gooey pastry cream of show-stopping circular music to absorb me. It would not be an overstatement for me to say that Jillian performs the rare feat of both dazzling us with their craft and teaching us a radical new way to read. The Donut World is neither merely a poetry collection nor a work of fiction, but a malleable ecosystem, tenderly transmitted to the page and transmuted by the poet, who takes their task with the utmost gravity. Unlike the sweet confections that fill the bodies of the collection's beings, it cannot be easily consumed. Words appear in shapes that appear to have been blown about in disarray, or like they're squirming out of our grasp. Fonts glitch to signal a foreign voice attempting to get through. Occasional pictorial symbols peek their heads up between words, and faint gray watermarks whisper their giggling subtext. Gluts of confectionery and textile language trap and stagnate us like we've stepped in sticky honey globs and prevent us from actually getting anywhere. Linear narrative progress as a product of our straight capitalistic love of brevity and to the pointedness ceases to exist. When experiencing these lyric poems, plays, stage notes, announcements, drawings, recipes, and somatic ritual instructions Jillian has curated, I am aware that each formal decision is meticulous, and for that, I feel entirely willing to follow wherever the speakers lead, even if it is directly into the hole where, in the event of severe weather, we must follow the path where signs should have been placed and lay down to accept whatever comes. Please join me in welcoming my friend Jillian Fantin.
Thank you so much, Mary. I'm moving this, I'm sorry. I can't. I can't. I need to see everything. Mary, that was amazing. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. So before I really begin getting into my reading, I just wanted to do a brief land acknowledgement because I recognize that my reading and the poetry that I've crafted and refined here occurs on stolen and occupied land from nations including the Miami Nation, the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, the Peoria Tribe of Indians of Oklahoma, and the Kickapoo Traditional Tribe of Texas. All of these nations continue to create today, and I would be doing a great injustice to their history and their present to not mention my use of their ancestral homeland. And also a note about my works, they are highly performative and theatrical, so if I slip into different voices or do anything weird, that's because these are silly and weird. So the first little piece is a lyric selection from a very hybrid theater poetry piece. It's a selection from The Frying. Eyes, eyes, wake my bespoke spine, dripping in deciduous voicemail. As Huckle Baby Swiss rolls my belly, I pull out stars my bean brains into aluminum macrame. Royal icing crowns my cotton white mold. Cravat says eyes watching Batman Forever. Joe the Lion, Candy Barfly, a fat stack of souffle pancakes. I, your curls hair round my thumb, sweat raspberries. May H. Babe and Juan Jotters bless your syrup. The tree has dubbed me dummy cake, over fondant foam, a washed down middle-aging banana rimming the crack of dawn. Okay, this is one of a few pieces from my collaborations with mixed media artist Kate Luther, who I really encourage you to look up. She's really cool. And this is entitled Edith Massey Brought Potato Salad on the Ferris Wheel. Crucifixion on the blue boo, jaunty wall knives go sugar spun, hitchhiking hot wagon nuclear, love letter dream sequence. It's no wonder the Snow Wonder Queen leaves no teeth or Teddy's shadow, since she actually fucks in lace, cracking fingers cleared for liftoff. She's that same bitch, but does a bitch stay the same? Is a bitch a constant? Or do we conjugate a bitch and leave the stem untouched? Whatever it is, just go mow the gap-toothed lawn and punk the sod into an alibi. Wear out your eyes before the tartan egg scrambles into grand great mother, stymied against the ken, a sucker for the dreamland instant snow. This is an acrostic meditation on a People magazine photo earlier this year of Selma Blair with her bleach blonde hair. I love Selma Blair. So this is blonde Selma Blair in yellow sequins 2021. Fresh scooped kiwi lips, quirking at the corners like a manic micro-mollusk, Elmer's all-purpose pineapple smile thick with pearls. I swear I could be your buttered toast, your marbles, your heaven and hell boy. No cruel intentions, just a few activities, reminding me to pucker, slipping your sour skittle between my bottom teeth and lower lip, lazing in wet satin hair as the chlorine melts post-butterfly, brushing blue velvet and bits of broken sun over our water-weak fingernails, bedazzling Valentino denim, plastic cups, old broken fence posts into Furbies and hip bones, and thoroughly dramatic readings from Iphigenia and Aulis. If you play Artemis, I'll play the sacred deer. So we walk the length of some gallery until you smile and I smile and we remember we're just looking out our bedroom window at all the other windows. And look, there's a banana pepper in that one. This is another Kate Luther inspired piece, inspired by one of her pieces that involves a bed frame called Bitch and Betty. This does take and weave lyrics from Australian punk band Lash's song Take Me Away, which was featured in the Lindsay Lohan version of Freaky Friday. So this poem is entitled Bitch and Betty Thinks Lindsay Lohan's Dead. High heeling up tinfoil calves, corseting lobster claw, your potential. A pescatarian lesbian power authority minus feet plus a baby. Doll that blinks the second it falls backwards. Yeah. Your hair all acetone wearing chest-like hats. Yeah. Peach cloach knockers, sequin nipples splooged about the bed like duct tape wallets doing the laundry dissolve in limited 2 denim. Get up, get out. You're the cactus, the small and never propagated that Bella Swan brought to the westest, wettest coast. You move on, move on. Wiggle through the mesh, shake weight the neon orange fungi. Miss Ma'am, there's no doubt you're the sexiest nosebleed I ever did see. A divine design toy poodle fencing chameleons with cocktail swords. You're duochrome tinsel, and I'm all wrong in scallop-studded Cartier. Frosted glass tastes like jalapeno Pringles if you bite hard enough. You're right, you Hollywoulda, coulda, shoulda filled your lungs with rib sequins, gold curtain tassels, wet socks, tiramisu and Corinthian column shavings. Bitchin' Betty, bitchin' Betty, bitchin' Betty, it's all the same in your bitchin' Betty Davis eyes. With you, eyes are just eyes, are just eyes. I'm just eyes too thin for a light shag, too fat for a shag rug. You ask from your bed for Herod's sourdough. Why did you crouton the Roquefort runaways, nightstand pearl-mashed curbsides, feather dust the so latent peppercorns and eight-ply ostrich? So do I plastic for your presence? Keira Knightley satin green, acrylic pleaser heel till you let me in your bed? Don't wanna grow up. Can we push pop clit? I wanna get out. Disco finger? Hey, if you've got lips, at least let me kiss. Take me away. This is, another lyric selection. This is from Intermission, wherein we enter the hole and Pierrot performs burlesque. Raw flower boy, pleasure cruise acrylic sinking down the pole. Pantaloonies in the oatmeal, his legs Higgs, butterfly the bog erotic. Get ready, get red dye 40'd for Little Peter live in friction burn funhouse barrel of love. Anticipation is broken meringue. Pierrot, a field haphazard of breasts and pecs, mismatched nipples, all raw, all leaking jam and cramp patisserie. Down, white knobbed knees into every crack, rip. He is a rough, an abundance of nipples, Argus-eyed. I want to hang him on my wall. This is the final of my Kate Luther collaboration pieces. This was the first one I wrote for her. This is called Party Penis. It's a giant thing made of lampshades and tulle and fabric, and it's beautiful. So, Party Penis. Lampshades, bone vein, the watercolor wangs, house of fluff, homeware, squeak, and botched hairline. Kneel to honey-caked Priapus, silk and sheer ball bonnets, deflated bubbles waiting for a taffy plumping. Squirmels and Peppa Pig worship jizz confetti, those good vibrations, for fudge-flooded rivers and an apricot farm. Oh, cherry pink Priapus, do you coin operate, token shimmy, food-grade glitter? Or do you slipper lady footfucker, canopy water slide beds, squish mochi testes and pastel hair shirt? Kneel, Priapus, scuff knee sacrifice for a streak, she-devil Priapus, uncut and bubblegum bitchy, pomegranate us just one lube slick kiss before we Pepto-Abysmal in your forever sludge, all prostrate prostates and raspberry ripple dipsticks. This is my final lyric selection. This is from a piece called Gore Vidal said JFK's got a fat ass. That really happened. He did say that. So, Horace screams a happy Juan Jotters against broccolini earths with mud, just dirt mud, grow in the basest celery, limpest red potato, and most acidic baby carrot. Oh, brown sugar gore, squirm and bove. Curb stomp watercress till teeth floss to tapestry needles. Do the cough suppress and candy web the corners. Full moon apella, persimmon over ice. Let the sugar boil. Oh, that wasn't nice. And this is my last piece, which I will be reading twice because it's structured in a way as to be read both vertically in columns and horizontally. It's a part of a larger series called Portrait of the Artist as a Blank. This one is Portrait of the Artist as a Dead End. My ice-creamed cabbage veins just swallowed your backside coal mine in the Sanoderm smell and spine of cinema. I love you like a talk show. I love you like pronouncing Saoirse, say oi Reese. I love you like effervescent misspelled. I love you like I want to be trapped in the drive-through. A deadish bee steals my gel pens to grow a bear claw. Flaked almond bear claws. Perfect for watching Wanda, the one with Barbara Loden. You don't mind that poets won't afford Disney Plus, that my mullet parties on your shoulders, that carbon, that I wear no-show socks when we fuck and when we don't. Portrait of the artist at the dead end. My ice-creamed cabbage veins in the drive-thru. A deadish bee just swallowed your backside, steals my gel pens to grow a bear claw coal mine. Flaked almond bear claws in the Sanoderm spell and spinal cinema, perfect for watching Wanda, the one with Barbara Loden. I love you like a talk show. I love you like pronouncing Saoirse, say oi Reese. I love you like effervescent misspelled. I love you like I want to be trapped. You don't mind that poets won't afford Disney Plus, that my mullet parties on your shoulders, that carbon, that I wear no-show socks when we fuck and when we don't. Thank you.